Welcome, everyone, to the Next Gen Call Center series, where we interview experts and get their perspectives, best practices, and insights when it comes to implementing AI in your call center. Today, we're super privileged to have Dave Darcy, Managing Director of Laughing Leadership, previously at RingCentral and Vonage. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today.
Not at all. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So just to kick things off, you have a really unique background of building call centers from the ground up, starting from the 1990s. So I'd love for you to just share with the audience, what's your experience been like, starting out and where are you at today?
Yeah, sure. I had an interesting start, an interesting introduction to contact centers. I don't think anybody goes into their career thinking, hey, do you know what? I really want to work in a contact center. But it kind of, we find ourselves there. I was working for a business that was a contract rental business in London from the mid 80s through to the late 90s. The company decided, the managing director decided that he wanted to create a what he referred to as a retention call center. So contract rental business, so lots of repeat custom. And they were losing customers quicker than they were buying new customers, in essence. And so he wanted a center that would phone out to external to the customer and say, why are you looking to leave? Can we change your mind? Can we bring you back on board? With the aim of being really dual purpose. One, to try and bring those customers back into the fold, but if not, to identify what the drivers were that were taking customers away so that we could implement change in the business. And he asked me if I would set this center up. And I remember saying, Robert, I don't know anything at all about contact centers. And he said, well, no, neither do I, but I reckon between us we can figure it out. So I spent the next 3 months literally locked in a 12-foot square room with no windows, but many whiteboards, and designed from the ground up a contact center. And the rest, as they say, is history. And subsequently, I've worked for a number of major global businesses. You mentioned RingCentral and Vonage. I've also had periods of time with AOL, with Vodafone, and Sky, to name just a few. And then went through a process of creating my own consultancy business. That gave me the opportunity to travel the world. Spent time in Malaysia, South Africa, India, just wonderful times. And then eventually, one of my clients encouraged me back into permanent employment, and that was Vonage. I moved from there into RingCentral, and unfortunately, last year, due to same as many other companies, I unfortunately was made redundant. And therefore, at a time of not really understanding quite what I wanted to do, I launched Laughing Leadership, which is an employee engagement and customer experience consultancy, dominantly dealing in the contact center world. And it's built on the premise that if we believe that happy staff make happy customers, then just think of the great work that truly engaged staff can have on your customer base. And so that's where we started. And the name Laughing Leadership came about because a friend of mine informed me that one of my attributes is I make people laugh, and work should be fun. And on that ilk, in actual fact, I'll just plug myself a little bit here. On Sunday, this coming Sunday, I actually launched my stand-up comedy career with 3 gigs on Sunday night. So I'm really following the dream in both areas.
Yeah, I love that, Dave. It's funny. One of your other friends, Nere's, so we also just interviewed her, I want to say last week. She also
Yes.
has a similar kind of focus of, employee or agent experience. And I like how the focal point of your company is also kind of around that as well. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Because it seems like oftentimes in the call center, contact center space, people tend to forget, like, hey, it's important that our agents actually have a good experience and they're happy and they are thriving in their career, right?
Yeah, I think it's essential that be the case. And I think the way I looked at it was that a lot of businesses, a lot of contact center businesses, and others, but who have contact centers, start their measurement in the middle of the journey. So a lot of these organizations will put a great deal of importance on customer satisfaction numbers or on net promoter score, and other measures like that. But they're in fact the output of the activity that is conducted by your agent, which is the input. And in any walk of life, we recognise that you know, you are responsible for managing the input. The output will be what it will be. And so, to some extent, I think my view, and I know Neris similarly has a similar view, it is that we should start our journey at the beginning of the journey. And so, if our input is making the lives and the working environment and the clarity and giving clarity around the purpose and vision of the business and clarity about around what the individual's part in that vision is, then that will enable them to be better working with your customers, which will naturally result in a stronger customer satisfaction score and net promoter score, which, as I say, is the output.
Absolutely. It makes total sense. So, kind of speaking along the lines of employee experience or agent experience, as we move into 2024, or as we're in the middle of 2024, I feel like time has been flying by. It's crazy, right?
Absolutely.
Can you kind of speak to like what are the dominant trends you're seeing, whether that's with agent experience or customer experience or AI? I'm sure everyone's been, consulting you on.
Yeah, I think it's kind of recognised. It's been talked about a lot over the last year or two that overall customer experience is in decline, um, and I think a lot of that reason is because companies have made the mistake of concentrating on process and concentrating on output. And we obviously had a huge change in our working practices with the result of the pandemic, that led to businesses operating in a different way. And I think that really highlights the value of putting some real effort into your employee engagement to get back to that position where we're starting to drive through customer experience. The other thing that I'm really noticing is absolutely people have talked for 5 or 10 years now about artificial intelligence and how great it is and how it's going to, the robots are going to take over the world and we'll all be on holiday 365 days a year. And I've never subscribed to that team. I've never felt that was going to be the case. And I think the trend I'm really seeing most now is companies starting to recognize that artificial intelligence is a tool to help your agents have a more engaged, enjoyable work experience. I think we've stopped considering it as how do we deflect contact from the customers into some form of digital solution that enables the customer to self-serve, regardless of whether the customer actually wants to self-serve or not. And so I think what we're seeing now is that companies are starting to think about how can I use this artificial intelligence to make the work that my greatest asset, my human resource, to make the work that they do much more enjoyable, much easier to complete, and therefore enable them in the more complex, high value inquiries, be able to concentrate their efforts on working on those, and using tools that we perhaps hadn't previously considered, things like real-time knowledge-based articles, being prompts to agents to help them with the inquiry they're dealing with, real proper agent assistance that gives value. And I think that's where I'm seeing the big change, movement away from how can I reduce the workload and therefore reduce my cost to how can I prioritize my employees so that they give my customers the greatest service and therefore I can increase my revenue.
Definitely. I think it's great that we're kind of getting more of the sobering rhetoric around AI, right? Because I think there's, you've seen it definitely, right? Subsequent hype cycles around AI in the call center space, and it always, hits this inflection point of hype, and perhaps, some of these different companies roll these proof of concepts out, oftentimes to varying degrees of success. And, I think it's great. We're getting to a point where we have definitive use cases where we can kind of say, well, these ones here drive a consistent degree of business outcomes in some capacity. Right.
So I think that's very big.
Yeah. So I think along the same lines, or perhaps a dovetail off that question of trends, are there any, I guess, particular obstacles or challenges specific to 2024 that you are hearing for the first time, or as you have more conversations with executive stakeholders, if you're hearing some sort of common pattern there this year?
There is absolutely a ongoing requirement that businesses want to automate and digitize and become more of a self-serve environment. Um, I think the other thing that really stands out for me right now, and artificial intelligence has enabled this enormously for us, um, is the fact that as a result of the pandemic, we all ended up working remotely. And I think that one of the biggest challenges facing businesses right now is getting their heads around, do they want to maintain that remote working pattern, or do they want to start bringing people back into the office? Um, and we're seeing this happen in various businesses where you know, companies are saying that's the end of it now. We want you back in the office, and there's no rationale to it. The companies aren't able to, the executives of these companies don't seem able um, to explain what benefit there's going to be for the employee, for the business, for the customers by bringing those people back into the office. Um, and as I say, artificial intelligence has created this situation because it was in such a place that we were able to just say, everybody go home and work. Um, and I think there is massive value in bringing people back into the office. I think we have to find a balance about, whether that be every day or some form of hybrid model. But I think there's no denying that nothing beats working face to face with somebody. Nothing beats through human interaction. Um, but equally, I think businesses have got to recognise that they asked a lot of their staff when they said go home and work, um, and their staff have built their lives around that phenomenon. And to now say to them, no, 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 change the rules, come back in again. There has to be a balance found there. But I think that is the biggest challenge I see this year in just making that decision and helping the teams to understand why the decision is being made.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your perspective on that. It's interesting because we do hear a lot of that across the board from the small companies, and I know Microsoft is bringing everyone back in. And speaking to some folks that I know there's mixed feelings around that. Some people
Yeah.
love it, some people hate it. So you're right. It's like figuring out what's the balance, what's that right composition that's actually practical, right? Versus just like this binary. Everyone comes back in the office, right? Makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was working with a company that had a change in executive management um, uh, and made the decision, right, everybody is back in the office, minimum 3 days a week. Didn't really offer any reasoning or benefit behind it and saw huge attrition.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. So it's like, what is that right balance? I'm hoping probably this year and into next, people figure it out. Is my sense. Um, so kind of switching gears specifically to chat about AI. So I know you mentioned that your perspective is very much from the standpoint of not replacement, but augmentation. So I would love to just like get your perspective on like, you talking to executive stakeholders at these call centers. You've seen, just over the years, all the way from the 90s, to present day where we have, some amazing agent assist platforms. Like, what does that actually mean practically, right? So when we talk about augmenting agents, like if you could like share any anecdotal stories, because I'm sure, you starting out in the 1990s to now, it must be amazing to see, wow, agent assist is actually making our agents X more effective or reducing the amount of time they have to stay on the phone. Like, what does that augmentation piece like look like practically to you?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, you're absolutely right. The changes, you can't even begin to imagine the changes that have occurred over the last 30 odd years. Um, when you think when we first started, we didn't have CRM. We didn't have power dialers and the kind of technology that we now simply take for granted within our contact center environments. So yeah, everything is an evolution. We the introduction of chat, for example, was seen as wow, and nobody's going to want to do that. Well, actually, yeah, they did. It's not for everybody, but and I think um, we have to view the introduction of artificial intelligence and how it can. I often say to people the importance is to see it as something that will enhance your service rather than something that will replace your service. Um, and so you see some great examples of things like, the artificial intelligence tool that will enable um, the call recording in real time, but also the conversation and analysis of that call recording in real time, that then allows the AI to pop knowledge article that may assist the client, the agent, in dealing with the customer. And that's stuff that's happening now. And that's, as we look to move forward, we're going to be in a position where the agents that are using these tools won't see them as anything other than completely normal and natural to them. In exactly the same way that, a little bleep in your earpiece telling you there's a call there is entirely normal. Exactly that same way. Um, I think the real important part here is everything is cyclical. And if we think about how contact center businesses over the years have worked, we've gone through a process of, it's about getting it done cheaper. It's about bringing the efficiencies or the economies of scale together to make your business more successful. But it was very much that was a cost center. It was, how do we reduce the costs? How do we maximize the work that we get out for the smallest cost? I think it's a very American term, but I think the first way I heard this described was, how do you get the most bang for the buck? And so that was the way contact centers worked. And we've then gone through a cycle of people going, actually, it's not about cost, it's about quality. How do we make the customer's experience the best that it can? And then that becomes, how can we make that quality into a revenue stream? So let's talk about cross-sell and upsell. And we have an environment now where AI actually enables that whole journey. So it can manage your cost, it can ensure your quality, but it can also highlight opportunities for you to drive revenue. And I think that at this moment in time, what we really need to maximize is that piece that says, okay, the very transactional work, AI can handle that. It's much more cost efficient than using human resource to manage that. So we will use the AI to filter contact reason and place that contact in the place that is most suitable for that particular transaction. And this again, this all we know that this all exists. We can then look at the key words in a transaction or in a conversation that allows the AI to make suggestions about where this contact is going and how we can make the best of this interaction. And again, that's AI. That means that your human resource is concentrating on the thing that they should be best at, and that's building the relationship, enhancing the conversation, and ensuring that there's a real connection between company and customer, because the transactional activity is being done for them, and that's what enables the agent to be best assisted, to be happiest in their job, to be best at their job, and therefore, come back to it: happy staff, happy customers.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was an amazing explanation. I like how you kind of, both talked about like figuring out what's that right composition for when you use full automation, for example, some chat bots for perhaps some more low risk, self-service type of knowledge bases that you could just have people access. But for things that, you need that human touch, right? Suggesting you are leveraging some sort of more advanced AI to assist that agent so they can provide the best, to your point, relationship building skills and like capacity makes a ton of sense. We actually had interviewed the CEO of Cresta, and that's just an amazing agent assist platform. And, starting to kind of peer into the future of like that customer journey is going to be very integrated across that whole spectrum to the point where, I think you're kind of alluding to, like, if the agents are just spending all their time building relationships, I think at the end of the day, we're just going to see that quality of customer support and customer service finally kind of come back to, it's really funny. Like you think about like, I don't know, like 20 years ago or like even 100 years ago, right? You had like there's like one store in your city and that guy kind of knew everyone because it was small and he was building those relationships and it worked, right? Because at the time you didn't need to scale, right? And then we had, the advent of the internet and all these technologies, but what you lost oftentimes was that personalization, like real personalization. Like, yeah, hi, I know you, Dave, and here are the things that I know that you've purchased in the past, and here's how I can help you. And it seems like we're kind of getting closer, to that degree of personalization, which I think is really exciting.
I think it's great. I think it's really the right way to go. And I think the other thing we have to think about is that um, it makes the working environment better for everybody. It makes the end-to-end journey better for the employee, the company, the customer. Um, but I think it's probably one of the most recent events. The introduction of AI is probably one of the most recent events that's made people fearful. Um, and it's seen as an opportunity to replace people, and therefore it's going to cost jobs and so on and so forth. But if you think about it, you're right. 20 years ago, the introduction of the internet, a similar kind of thought process was working there. Going 100 years, going 200 years, and in every job, every walk of life, there's always been invention. There's always been that evolution. And it, I'm trying to think of an example. I guess um, the farmers didn't. They very quickly got used to the idea of having tractors because they didn't have to feed the tractor. And they could get the job done much quicker. Um, and all that really was an enhancement and an evolution from one using one method to using another. And that's all we're really talking about here with artificial intelligence. It is an opportunity for us to improve the offering to our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better than that. And I think along the lines of that, and I think you kind of had mentioned it at some point in this conversation, is that there is risk, right? So it's also figuring out what is the tolerances and what are the use cases that are best fit, to use, to add on to your example, tractors. What situation do you use tractors and what situation do you use, something else, right? So, as you begin to, or as you talk to your existing customers and those stakeholders, what do you tell them as far as how should they be strategically positioning themselves around these AI tailwinds today? And I imagine that's a different conversation with different companies. Different companies have different maturities, but like, what does that general conversation kind of sound like today to get that ball rolling?
The starting point really has to be, why are you doing this? What do you want this AI tool or this change to bring about for you? And I think, I've spoken to a lot of companies, a lot of my clients, and start with it's okay if your reasoning for wanting to introduce something is because you want to reduce costs. That's okay, but let's just be honest about it. Let's not say, oh, we want to drive an improvement in our customer experience, when actually that might be a byproduct of what you're doing, but the primary goal is to reduce cost. And I think similarly, if you really do want to improve customer experience or employee experience, then understand that there might be a byproduct that's a cost reduction, but there might not be. But then have the full picture, the holistic view of what is it you're trying to achieve here. Are you prepared to invest for a drive that will bring you a greater degree of loyalty and customer tenure? Are you prepared to invest that might grow your revenue? Or do you actually want to say, I'm prepared to allow the revenue side of the business to stay where it is? I want to increase the profitability by bringing down the cost base. So I think that's the starting point. The next piece of advice that I always give clients is start small. Don't try and boil the ocean. Take a process and understand what you want from that process. Do you want to make that process simpler? Are you trying to please the customer with it? Are you trying to drive that cost saving? What's the actual aim? And that should never be lost, because I think it's very easy for people to say, "Oh, that's a simple process, so we should automate that process." But understand, if you've got 0.5% of your contact activity coming through that process, or 50%, because that changes whether it's a high priority task or a low priority task. So absolutely start small, um, and continue to ask yourself constantly that question: what is it I want from this? I love the saying that every boardroom in the world should have a 10-year-old in it, because a 10-year-old will keep asking why. And that's the challenge that I put to my clients all the time. When a client comes to me and tells me what the solution they want is, then I need to know why, because have they considered all other potential solutions? Have they made up their own mind? Therefore, what do they need me for? Yeah, I only said to somebody the other day, if I knew what was wrong with my car, I wouldn't take it to a garage. I'd fix it myself.
Totally agree with that. Yeah, no, that's some great practical advice. So along the lines of strategy, right? And we start to think about all of these different tools that we could leverage, right? And we spoke about agent experience kind of being paramount to the outputs of everything that you're driving. So from your perspective, how are kind of newer AI technologies, for example, like accent softening that we're doing here at Tomato AI, being perceived by kind of the broader industries that are leveraging these types of technologies? Like, what's your perspective on that?
I think there is so much new coming into the marketplace, that almost every time when you hear of something, wow, I'd never even considered that. I don't know how much use I'd get out of that. But I think, like every new technology, as the adoption grows, it will become more the norm. So, for example, 2 or 3 years ago, voice analysis was kind of a big thing. Now we've moved that. That's now everybody has some form of voice analysis in their contact center, um, because it's bringing them insight. But now we've also got voice analysis and conversation analysis that will enable you to understand mood and sentiment, both of your agent and of your customer. That opens the door then for you to start identifying words that are negative words for a customer and words that are positive, both hearing and speaking. Um, I don't think anybody thought that was thinking that was going to be possible 2 or 3 years ago. Um, I think the work that you guys do at Tomato AI is, you know, as soon as we talked about it, I could see the benefit of how you could implement it in a business. I think with a lot of these products, the next step really is getting them in front of uh, CEOs and CFOs and CTOs to make them think about how they could use that in their business and how essential is it to their business. I think we talked about it before that there are certain types of businesses that the importance of having an accent softened or neutralized would be massively beneficial. Um, and there's so much work that's gone into that over the years before we even thought of AI. I mean, the reasons why there are pockets of locations around the world that have contact centres, particularly here in the UK. You know that we've got contact centres in Wales and Scotland and the northeast of England, and there's smattering elsewhere around. But the reason for that location is because those accents were recognised as being the warmest and most welcoming accents, and people didn't want to have a call centre with somebody, and I'll be hated across the county, but with somebody with an Essex or a London accent, it wasn't as attractive. And so, I think what we're getting to is a position where the new technology is adding the sprinkles on top of the birthday cake. It's kind of, we're now going, look, we're really, really good at running contact centers. We all know how to do it. We all know where the pitfalls are, and we all know how to fix these items. How can we enhance it? What's the next stage we can do? We'll put something else on there. We wouldn't have thought maybe 30, 40 years ago. We wouldn't have thought that you know, you needed air conditioning and, well, certainly in this part of the world, you needed air conditioning and a radio in a car. Well, now nobody would even touch a car if it didn't have air conditioning and a radio. And so these are things that are currently being sprinkles on top of the birthday cake, but over time will become an ingredient in the cake.
Definitely. Yeah. No, that's some timely advice, especially for CTOs, CIOs, business executives that are listening to this podcast today. So kind of a good segue is like, what does a maturity model look like? What does an AI maturity model look like for these call centers, right? If we were to start as basic as possible and then work our way up to, I don't know, like, for example, agent assist seems like something a lot more involved, higher total cost of ownership. So from your perspective, like if everything kind of played out perfectly, obviously we know in real life it doesn't always work that way, but where would you start and then where would you kind of end up as far as like that maturity cycle for a call center?
Yeah, every call center is going to be different. Every market is going to bring about different requirements. Yeah, the sector of the segment of a marketplace within your contact center will change the way you want to approach this. You will want one solution from an AI perspective that deals with your shall I say, low priority, low value customer range, all the way up to all the bells and whistles and everything that can possibly be done to assist your highest value, highest priority customers. And it's naive for us to suggest, oh no, we treat all our customers the same. We don't, and we don't want to, and we don't have to. And so I think from a maturity perspective, there has to be that strategic plan that says, what do we actually want, and how do we want to treat the customers in this segment? How do we want to treat the customers in the next segment? And then start to overlay that with what does that customer want? Because we then have all sorts of other elements that come into play. What's the demographic of your customer base? If you've got a relatively young um, age range of customers, you can probably comfortably think about more and more automation. You can think about using apps. You can start to think about how that group want to interact with you as a company. But then equally, as even for that age demographic, when you start to get to different levels of value, you need to overlay that because those customers may still want to be able to transact remotely or in an automated manner until it gets to something that's important to them. And then we need to know the voice. I said earlier, start very, very small. I think that's the most important thing is start very small. Think about what you're trying to achieve, and that will drive your maturity. And then, as you come through that and everything starts to work, and you're starting to understand the customer's needs and align to the business needs, then it'll just grow and grow and grow. And I think I still don't believe that we have seen true omni-channel. And I think the first company that comes along that absolutely ticks the box on omni-channel is going to be huge because we don't yet have that a real handle on that opportunity to have a contact on an app that feeds into a conversation via chat, that feeds into a voice conversation with complete end-to-end synchronicity that makes that customer feel like it is just one interaction with that business. And I know there'll be a lot of people screaming at their screens and going, Dave, you're wrong, my company does that. I think there's a lot of companies out there that do a lot of it. But ask the general public, ask the consumers, and ask the business customers if they feel that they have that end-to-end opportunity to interact with any of their suppliers. And I think the vast majority will tell you no.
Yeah,
But
I
that,
agree with you. Yeah.
but that's where I see. Yeah, for me, that's the nirvana.
Mm.
To have a fully matured AI-enabled contact center business then that's where we get to. We get to that true omni-channel integrated center that ensures that the highest um, valued resource or human resource is dealing with the most important activities for us.
Absolutely. Polarizing take, or maybe not that polarizing, because I totally agree with that point as well. It's like it's a marketing buzzword at this point. So many companies have said they can do it all, and it's just not true, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the challenge with it is we have so many different customer journeys. And to truly move to omni-channel, we've got to be confident that we've mapped every single customer journey accurately, um, because we know somewhere in that there's going to be a cul-de-sac, there's going to be a dead end, and that's when it's going to fall down. Um, and so, and not to mention the fact that customers, they keep changing the journey, don't they? Damn customers. It's I had somebody work for me some years ago, and I loved this when scripting was a big thing in contact centers, and she said scripting doesn't work because the customer hasn't got a copy of the script, and so the customer journey keeps changing.
Yeah, so you might have to do stand up for the call center industry. That'd probably be pretty funny. Um, but yeah, no, great points. Totally agree with you. I think it is a great idealistic vision that I do believe, in our lives, we will see come to fruition. Like totally, it's going to take a lot more, hitting our heads on the wall until we can figure it out. But it seems like the precipice hopefully is close here.
Yeah,
But
and Chad, we've got to always remember, there's things that we're working with now that 10 years ago we hadn't even thought of.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so we've thought of omni-channel, so we can envisage that. We've already thought of it, but there's something out there that none of us have given any thought to yet, and it'll be in our contact centers within a decade.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, But last question, and I think this one should be kind of interesting, especially provided your kind of breadth of experience. Like, are there any like specific best practices that kind of jump out to the forefront of your mind, right? Having started back in the 1990s all the way to today, like, are there like kind of golden rules that you often tell people, or best practices?
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
Um, I think, and this isn't just contact centers. I think in any management role, um, you know, listen twice as much as you speak, because the people in your team, um, they know they know stuff that you don't think they know, and they know stuff that you don't know. And so listen and take on their advice. I think that yeah, I greatly wish that I had the knowledge at 25 that I have at 55. It's absolutely true when people say youth is wasted on the young. It absolutely is. And unfortunately, by the time you get that knowledge, you're too old to properly use it. And that's not really true. But I think that, for me, um, I've felt throughout my career that the best teams that I've built have been the teams where I've surrounded myself with people who know and can do things that I can't. And then my job is to bring that team together as a single unit, um, and let them do their work. And I think the contact center industry over the last 30 years, I've seen that really start to develop. We're really starting to see now, and very much so in the established contact center nations, but in some of the newer growth nations, it's beginning to come through and work through now. But it's really that whole need to empower people, to trust them, not to be hierarchical, to enable people the right to make a decision. Um, all of that is a real opportunity to drive greater levels of customer experience, and therefore greater customer loyalty, greater customer tenure, and all those good things that come with that. And I think um, where my big lesson really is to believe that everything is possible. I've often said, and told my team recently, nothing is impossible. Some things are impractical and some things are incredibly difficult, but nothing is impossible. And our job is to help to find the solution that delivers the outcome that is required. And I think we make the mistake often of thinking that the solution we have found has to be adapted to get to the result we want. Well, actually, start at the result. What do you want? And then come back and find how you get there. And so I think it's a great time to be working in the industry because I'm seeing a lot of change and a lot of positive change. And I love the fact that I have moved from that operational lead to that people employee engagement role. Because it's become so apparent to me that that's the most powerful tool we have in our box. It is our people. So listen to what they have to say, trust in them, and believe that everything is possible.
Fantastic advice, Dave. Thank you so much again for sharing all your expertise. Would love to have you back on at some point in the
That'd be
future.
excellent.
And definitely good luck on the stand-up journey. We'll hopefully we'll have to see some of those video recordings soon.
Well, we'll do. We've got the final rehearsals coming up, and then we start
Nice.
on Sunday. So depending on, you'll know whether it's gone well or not, because if I post a video on Monday or Tuesday of my set, it's been okay. If I go radio silent, I've died on stage.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to that, Dave. But thank you so much for your time.
Not at all. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.